Hello, hello. I am saying hello. Okay, you can turn that down now. Because I'm going to get a little bit loud, probably. There we go. Cool. Because I tend to talk loud. I talk loud and I don't mean to. Anybody here a loud talker? You're just a loud talker. You can't help it. I know. All right. So tonight, all right, hold on. Tonight we are starting a series called Roadblocks, where we're going to look at some of the things that sometimes make faith tough. Some of the things that at times in my life have been reasons I didn't want people to know I'm a Christian. Because I didn't have answers to some of these things. I didn't know how to respond when somebody would ask me some of these tough questions. Some of these questions where I just go, you know what? I have faith and I believe in God and I believe these things are true, but I don't know how to respond to certain things that people get hung up on. Things that people ask and they go, you know what? I would believe in God if, or God would be easier for me to believe in if I knew whatever. And so over the next 6 weeks or so, we're going to look at some of these really tough questions because we should not just settle for the easy stuff, right? The stuff and just go, oh, well, you guys should just believe this. We should look at some of the tough questions. We should look at some of the things that maybe you are here and you've wondered about. That maybe you've never heard an answer, or maybe you've never heard an answer that satisfied you. Maybe you're here tonight and you really wrestle with your faith. You're like, I'm not even sure I believe this God stuff. I come to church because my parents make me. Or I come to youth group because my friends are here and I sort of just put up with this stuff, right? And I am so glad whether you are here and you are fine in your faith and you're like, no, I'm pretty good. Or whether you're here and you're going, I don't even believe this stuff. My friend invited me. So, go ahead there, teacher boy. You say what you want to say. And I am so glad that you're here because we need to dive in to these deeper things. And we all have questions that we wrestle with. And questions aren't bad. I want you to hear that. You are not bad. You are not a faithless person if you have questions. In fact, if you don't have questions, if you aren't wondering, well, what about this? Then it could say something about how seriously you're really wanting God to show you who He is. Because, guys, you cannot believe in God just because I tell you to. It's not going to work. And you guys are at an age now in junior high where maybe you grew up in a Christian home. And you've just kind of been believing stuff because it's what your parents believe. And so you kind of nod your head and you're like, and it won't always be like that where you're just going to be able to go, okay, yeah, whatever they say. Because God has something for you. God wants to reveal Himself to you and show you and have a relationship with you. He doesn't want to have a relationship because your parents have a relationship with Him. He wants to have a relationship with you. And some people don't have a need to dissect everything and have all the answers and things like that. And so this series is going to be good for you because there are going to be people in your life who are going to ask some tough questions. Others of you, you ask questions about everything. And you want to know. You're like, yeah, well, what about this? And this series is going to be good for you because we are going to look at some things that hopefully God is going to stir something in your heart and reveal Himself to you in some new ways. Or what we're going to talk about is going to give you the ability to think about some things a little bit differently and more understanding who God is and what He's trying to say to you. And let me tell you this right off the bat. My goal is not to talk you into believing something because that won't last for very long. I could get you to nod your heads tonight probably, but when you go home and you really think about it, or in years to come, when things come up and you start experiencing some things in your life, because Jeff said so, isn't going to hold up. And so my goal is that I'm going to present truth. And my hope is that you will begin to think about some things on your own, for yourself. That you'll ask questions. And that from there, God is going to do something huge in your life. God is going to do something in your heart where he's going to reveal himself to you. And it's going to be so much better than me talking you into believing something. Right? Does that make sense? So, when I was in high school, I had a friend named Dave. We did everything together. He was my best friend, my adventure buddy Dave. We would get hurt, and we'd have a point scale for who got hurt the most and who was ahead, and a broken arm was worth 6 points, and stitches was worth 3 points, and things like that. And so we did everything together, like you guys. Okay, awesome. So one time Dave went camping with us, and he and I were laying in the tent, and we had taken the top off our tent, that rain fly thing, so we could see up through the top of the tent. And we're laying there, and we're just talking, and Dave didn't believe. He wasn't a Christian. I'm not going to say he didn't believe in God, but he certainly wasn't pursuing God. And he and I were talking, and I asked him, I said, Dave, what's the thing that makes it hard for you to trust God? And his answer was really simple. He said, I can't see God. I'm like, so if you could see God, then you'd believe in him. And he said, yeah. If I could see God, well, then I would have faith. But how can I believe in a God that I can't see? This is one of the foundational questions that a lot of people have. This is one of the things that holds people up in going, look, it's not that I'm against God. It's not that I'm against the idea of God. It's not that I don't want to be an atheist. But how do I believe in a God that I can't see? And I wish so badly that I had then the response for Dave that I would have for him now. Instead, I laid there in silence just going, oh, man, what do I say? What do I say? And I think I said something like this. Yeah. Not exactly the comeback he was probably looking for, right? And we just we went to sleep, and that was the end of that. But this idea of how do we believe in a God we can't see? Now, let me start with this. Can we all agree that we all believe in something that we can't see? Is that true? Are we all willing to acknowledge that? All of us believe in something that we can't see. What's something that you believe in that you can't see? $1 million. Maybe somebody's seen $1 million, but Bryce hasn't. Okay, what else? Santa Claus. Okay? What else? What is something that you can't see that you believe in? What? A unitato. Okay. All right. What? Does anybody have a real answer for my question? Gravity. Look. Now, you see the effects of it. What else? The tooth fairy? You see the effects of gravity. You know that when I drop this, you believe it's going to fall. But you can't see gravity. What else? Huh? Air? You can't see, well, in California, you can kind of see the air with all the smog and things. But yeah, you can't. It's there, but you can't see it. Yeah. Yeah. Outer space. We've never seen certain areas of outer space, and yet we would probably all go, well, we know it's there. There are certain things that are too small for things to see. So, anyway, all of these, we believe in these things because we see the effects of them. We see the impact that they have on things. We know that things that are too small for us to see are still doing things. And so we see the effects, and yet we can't see them. So the struggle isn't always you don't believe because you don't see. It's more like, well, I see it or I see the effects of it. How do I know that it's actually from God? How does that prove that God exists? And belief that what we are seeing is God or is from God it requires faith. It requires the belief that God somehow is doing this. Now, this requires us to believe that God has uniquely made himself known or appeared to the world. That God, here's the thing. If God is as big and as powerful and as all-knowing as Christianity says he is it reasonable to say that he might appear and make himself known in some ways that everything else doesn't make itself known? Would we be willing to say that? That if something is so big and so powerful and so complex that he might make himself known in some ways that we might not be able to see, touch, hear, taste, smell. See, I think that is a reasonable assumption. If there's a God, I want him to be complex. Why? Yeah, like, if he wasn't a God, he'd be Austin. Now, there's nothing wrong with Austin, but he's certainly not someone that I'm going to worship and that I'm going to put all my hopes, all my dreams held in Austin's hands. No thanks, right? So, if I want God to be complex, and so I think it's reasonable for us to go, look, it's safe to assume that God has uniquely appeared and made himself known to the world. So we need to get out of this idea that, we're going to just be able to figure God completely out. If we could figure God out completely, he's not much of a God, right? Do you agree? Yeah. And so we need to come to that understanding that God has appeared uniquely. Now, there are some words here that I'm not going to use a lot, but I want you to know these are some things that are sciences or philosophies that people have. Metaphysics is the study of what is real. Okay? Immanuel Kant was one of these philosophers who goes, what is real? Is this stand real? Then, epistemology is, okay, this stand is real. How do we know it's real? Can you really know that something is real? And that leads us to empiricism. Now, empiricism basically says seeing is believing, right? Empiricism says it's real if you can see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, or feel it. No. Hear it. Hear it. That's what somebody who has an empiricist mindset would go, look, seeing is believing. It's real if you can touch it, feel it, taste it, see it, hear it, all those kinds of things. Here's the issue. If we are willing to believe that, okay, if there's a God, he's huge and he's beyond our full understanding, he's probably going to make himself known in some unique ways. We so badly want to reduce God to something that we can see, touch, hear, taste, and smell. We just want to minimize God and make him solvable. And a lot of times, that is where we box God off and go, look, if he's not going to just make himself known like that, then, well, he may not exist. That is an empiricist mindset. That is what those people will believe. But we believe in things that are not metaphysical. Remember what metaphysical is? Metaphysics? Study of what's real. Okay? That we believe in things that we can't see, touch, hear, feel, smell all the time, right? Would you get on an airplane? How many of you have been on an airplane? So you were willing to get on the airplane even though you can't see aerodynamics, right? That's the thing that makes a plane fly. It's the way that things interact with thrust and lift and all that. You couldn't see that, right? The last time you went on a plane, did you sit down with the pilot and have him reveal his knowledge to you in such a way that you too would be able to know exactly how to fly that plane? Okay? None of you have. None of you have done that. That's great, but you haven't been able to see the knowledge that he has, right? He explained it to you, but it's not at a level that you could understand it, okay, and do it yourself. How many of you would be willing to get on an elevator even though you have not inspected the cable that is lifting the elevator to really discover, is it the right gauge? What's going to keep it from plummeting 30 floors down into the basement and making you a pancake, right? Would you be willing to get on that? Yes, you would. You'd get on that elevator. So okay, hold on. Shh. We are willing to step out in faith and put our faith in things that we don't fully understand all the time. It happens all the time. And yet, when it comes to believing in God, we change our standard. And we decide, oh, well, I have to have every answer. I have to understand it completely. He has to reveal himself to me in ways that I don't expect anything else to appear to me. I'm going to make him meet this standard and reveal himself to me in a way that I can wrap my mind around and that I can feel, touch, or feel, hear, smell, taste, and see. Right? I can't even remember all of them. Here's what we can see in the Bible. It says this in Hebrews. Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we don't see. Faith means we don't see it. And we exercise faith all the time in all kinds of different ways in our life. So no one here is a faithless person. There's no one who doesn't have faith. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't seen you do it yet, but I have faith that you will. I have faith that these cables are not going to let me drop 30 stories, right? So no one is a faithless person. And yet, so it says, faith is being certain of what we don't see. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command. We have to have faith. How many of you saw the universe formed? None of us. None of us have seen the... So by faith, we have to believe the universe was formed. So that what is seen was made out of what... was not made out of what is visible. So this is going, look, all the things that you have faith in, all these things that you're willing to just trust, they came from something. And you're going to have faith that they came not from things that are visible, but from things that who made? Well, this is where it comes back to the idea of God. What do we believe is the originator and the creator of all these things? So, we're going to take a look at a few ideas that people will throw out there. Things like this. I only believe in things I can see. That's a self-contradicting statement. Stay with me here. Can you see a belief? Nope. Yes. You cannot see a belief. Because a belief is just this theoretical belief. It's just in your mind. You can't see a belief. So therefore, a person who says, I don't believe in something I can't see, would actually not be able to believe in anything because you can't see a belief. And they only believe in things they can see. That's just kind of a silly thing. Next, the next one. Many of life's most important realities can't be seen. And we've already talked about things. Magnetism. You can see the effects of a magnet. They stick together. You can see the effects of it, but you can't see magnetism. And yet, we put our faith in it. Gravity. We can't see gravity, and yet there is no way you're jumping out of an airplane without a parachute or some sort of backup plan, right? Because we believe that it's going to happen. So many of life's principles, not your school principles, but morality and ways to live appropriately in society. You can't see those things, and yet we believe in them enough to live that way. How many of you have ever heard the phrase, he lost his mind, right? Or she's out of her mind, right? Can you see a mind? You cannot see a mind. You can see a brain, but when you say somebody's lost their mind, you don't mean their brain fell out of their skull, right? That would be something entirely different, right? And yet, none of us would say that losing your mind doesn't exist. And so there are so many of life's realities that we can't see. And I'm telling you this, I'm making this point because these are some of the things that we're not willing to consider. These are some of the things that when people come to you and they go, look, how can I believe in a God I can't see? The same way you believe in all these other things you can't see. And that's one of the things that we don't stop and think about and consider and go, wait a minute, oh, okay. So, trusting God is going to take faith. Just like I have faith that all these other things are true. That all these other things are going to happen. Does that make sense? And that's something important that I want you to consider. Again, I'm not here to talk you into it. I don't want you to just be like, all right, that's it, you sold me. But think about that. What are the things that you're putting your faith in that you can't see? Right? Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where you, if I am saying I'm only going to believe in things that I can see, I want another answer for God. I want God, it's like I'm saying, God, you're going to have to prove yourself to me in these specific ways. And yet, we don't say, I expect you to prove gravity to me in these specific ways. I have to be able to see it, hear it, touch it, taste it, smell it. We don't do that. None of us do that. And yet, we do that with God. And this next part is going to be something that is an important element when it comes to believing in God. I won't believe in a God I can't see commits a category error. And here's what I mean by that. Let me show you. Is this on? What color is that? Okay. Now you can shout out a color, you know. Or what does a G taste like? Right? You cannot assign a property from one category to something in another category. You cannot associate a taste to a color. You can't associate a color to a sound. It's a category fallacy. That's what it's called. It's a categorical fallacy to do that. And yet, we want to do that with God. We say, God, I expect you, a spirit being, to make yourself physically present. I expect you to speak to me in a way that I can audibly hear. And we can't do that. It's a categorical error. We are expecting something that is in one category to have the properties of things from another category. And then we throw up our hands and go, oh, well, he must not exist because he's not revealing himself to us in ways that we want him to. Yeah.
What about oranges? You can taste an orange, and they're orange. You can taste orange.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a color, and you can taste
We've assigned a color to it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So if God's God, does that mean he's in like every category?
If God is God, well, God can certainly do whatever he wants. And we see in the Bible that God does appear to people in different ways. Sometimes he's a burning bush. Sometimes God has appeared as tongues of fire or wind or things like that. And so God can do anything he wants. And there have been times that he has made appearances. There have been times where God has wanted to demonstrate his presence, and yet he knows that our minds, our metaphysical minds, would absolutely explode if we actually saw him. And so he has covered people's eyes as he's walked by, and it's like, whew, we're in the presence of God. So God can make himself known in any way. But for us to hold God hostage and say, I'm not going to believe in you unless you appear in a way that I can wrap my mind around, unless you reduce yourself to something that I can comprehend or I can see, is a categorical fallacy. It's not something that can be done for us to reduce God like that. And honestly, as much as I want answers just like you do, I would love for God to make himself known in a physical way to me. And yet, I also don't. Because if God were just to reveal himself like that, what would it do to my faith? What need would there be for faith? The things, my pursuit of God and my openness and my heart to chase God and to invite him into my life to have his will, I would much rather him reveal himself that way than for me to be able to go, oh, well, God looks like Andrew. Right? So, what do we do? Because we want answers. There was a guy who was driving his car through the mountains of Tibet, and his car broke down, and some monks came and helped him. You know, the monks like, Agnus Dei Requiem. You know, those guys in the hoods. They came and rescued him. They took him back to the monastery. And as the guy spent the night there, he heard this amazing sound, this glorious sound. It just sent chills down his back. It was beautiful. And he asked one of the monks, what is that? And the monk said, I'm sorry, I can't tell you. You're not a monk. He left. He went back home. 10 years later, he came back, and he found the monastery. And as he walked onto the grounds of the monastery, he heard that sound again. And he asked the monks, what is that? And he said, we can't tell you. You're not a monk. He said, fine. What do I have to do to become a monk? And they said, you have to do a good deed for every person on the planet. You have to learn the language of every people group in the world. And so the guy said, fine. He went off and he went and did these things. Took years and years and years. He finally comes back. And they take him to a wood door. And they give him a key, and he walks through the wood door, and the sound gets a little louder and a little more glorious. And he comes to a brass door. And he goes, how do I get in here? They said, you have to go and memorize the Old Testament. So he went away. Took years. And he memorized the Old Testament. He comes back, and they give him a key to the brass door, and he opens it up. And he walks through, and he comes to a gold door. And the sound is right on the other side of the gold door. And he's like, where's the key? They said, you have to go memorize the New Testament. So he went, and he took the time, and he memorized the New Testament. And he comes back to the monastery, and they give him a key, and he puts it in the lock, and the sound is just engulfing him. And he opens the lock, and he walks through the door. You want to know what was making the sound? I can't tell you. You're not a monk. I'm sorry. So what do we do? Is this just like, oh, no answers, sorry, we just have to go on, and you just have to believe because Jeff said so, right? Okay, well, you'll never know that, right? Okay. I argue, and not me, based on truth that I believe in, that there is proof of God. And we see that, and we are told that in the Bible. In Ephesians it says, but here's the problem. Here's why we have such a hard time seeing it. Live no longer as the Gentiles do. Gentiles were people who didn't believe. For they are hopelessly confused. Their minds are full of darkness. They wander far from the life God gives because they have closed their minds and hardened their hearts against him. They've closed their minds and they've hardened their hearts against him. Remember, we talked in the beginning, are we willing to believe that if God is so big, he's going to reveal himself in some non-conventional ways? He's going to reveal himself in some unique ways. If we have hardened our hearts against him, if we have decided, no, I am only going to believe if I can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell you, then I'm not going to believe. We've hardened our hearts. Are we going to be able to see? Are we going to be willing to see the unique ways that God reveals himself? Probably not. Probably going to have a pretty hard time with that. One of the other proofs of God, a God that we so badly want to see. See, God knew that. And he gave us some proof that you cannot deny. Historically, metaphysically, you cannot deny Jesus. It's documented. He actually existed. The things that he did actually happened. We know that. And so if you want something that you can see, touch, hear, taste, and smell, Jesus was it. But even the disciples had a hard time believing. See, they were having a hard time and they said, Jesus, just show us God. Just show us the Father. And here's what Jesus said. Have I been with you all this time? At this point, he's talking to Philip. And yet you still don't know who I am? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. Whoa. So why are you asking me to show him to you? Don't you believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words I speak are not my own, but my Father who lives in me does his work through me. Just believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. Or, you being the metaphysical people that you are, you got to see, touch, hear, taste, and smell everything. Fine. Look at the things that I've done. The things that are not explainable in any other way than God. Than the power of someone much more powerful than any person. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Is that true? You've all seen the earth and sky, yes? Through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God. See, we want to reduce God to this idea of something that we can fully comprehend. And if he doesn't appear to us exactly the way we want him to, well then, never mind, game over. Not only do we not do that in really any other place in our life, with anything else in our life, God has reached out. God has given us evidence of him through Jesus, through his creation. And yet, if we are in a place where our hearts are going, no, until I actually see the face of God, I won't believe. You've hardened your heart against him. And so it really wouldn't matter whether you saw him or not. You wouldn't be able to believe. Before my grandpa died, I went and had lunch with him. And my grandpa has been a stone cold atheist his whole life. And he and I sat, and he's asking me, he's like, how can you believe this? How is this? And I had some good responses, and I felt like God was giving me the things to say. It was a really neat time. And in the end, my grandpa said, oh, well, I'm willing to allow God to reveal himself to me. Yes. I just don't think he will. You may come to church. You may go through the motions. You can do all the things that you think Christians are supposed to do. And yet, if your heart is hard against God, you're not going to be able to see who he is and what he's doing all around you, and it doesn't matter. Guys, I have seen miracles. I have seen people who could not walk be able to walk. I have seen deaf people be able to hear. And in those same instances, I have seen people say, what a coincidence. Wow, they're lucky. I have seen miracles that people have taken credit for because their hearts are cold and hard against God. So tonight, I want to challenge you, and I thank you guys for listening, because I know that this can be like, oh my gosh, what? I don't know. God's big, and the concept of God is big. But tonight, what I want you to leave here considering is, where is your heart in terms of your desire to know God? Because if you've made up your mind, no, I'm willing for God to show himself to me, but I don't think he will, your heart's hard against God. And my hope is that you would be willing to allow God to soften that heart, which is going to take faith. It's not going to be something where tonight, well, maybe, I don't know, God's going to appear in your room and be like, Moses, But what is your approach to God? Do you really want to know who he is? Because guys, I can tell you, the point came in my life where I had to stop living my parents' faith. I had some questions of my own that I had to be willing to allow God to speak to me. And guys, I'm here to tell you tonight, he did. He got a hold of my heart and he said, this is who I am. And that's where he wants each of us to be. So the band's going to come back up, and would you just bow your head right now? Don't worry about the person next to you. Don't worry about what they're doing. And I want you to consider that last question. Where is your heart in your approach to God? Are you open? Are you willing? Do you want to know God? Or have you been using the rationale of, well, I'll only believe in something I can see, even though you know it's not true? Because I know God wants to reveal himself to you. But it's going to mean that you, in an authentic way, go before him. And you allow him to. God, bring us to a place where we're willing to acknowledge that we don't know everything. We don't have all the answers. There's no way we can wrap our minds around how great you are and how vast you are. And I pray for each student in this room, each staff in this room, as we walk this journey of faith, that it would be real to us. And that we would realize that you are the key to life. You are the one that can save us. You are the one that can lead us, and that you want to. Father, make yourself known to each one of us.